that God will take it from where I brought it, and yeah, just that God would be glorified and speak to us as fathers. So happy Father's Day to each of you fathers. And I'm not sure why the father with the least amount of experience is talking to the rest of you. I have the youngest children here, but I guess the comforting thing is that we all have the same roadmap, and so yeah, we should be coming to the same conclusions, I guess. So, from what I understand, feels like maybe all of us, whether we're fathers or otherwise, have maybe had a little bit of a rough week and a lot going on, and just facing life's challenges. And so, and I guess what I have to share this morning, I think it applies maybe especially to fathers, but I think a lot of the aspects apply to leadership in general. And so whether you're a father or whether you're a man, a leader in any other way, I think this message can apply to you as well. So when I think about fatherhood, obviously maybe one of the biggest or one of the first things that comes to my mind is just the tremendous responsibility that it is to be a father, and to have offspring that we are responsible for. That can be just really a heavy weight that we really need God's help with. I think fatherhood is leadership, and leadership, in a sense, can be fatherhood. I think we as fathers have a tremendous amount of influence on, especially our family, and our wife and children. And one thing about fatherhood is that, so fatherhood begins right with the choice to have a child, and so fatherhood, we are fathers by choice. There's no way around that. But I guess the more serious part of that is that once you make that decision and have a child, then you are a father for the rest of your life, and there's really no getting out of that. People do try to get out of it. People walk away from their families. People walk away from their children. But it's really a lifelong thing. And fatherhood, I guess being a dad is something that it's something that we do every day, and being a father is something that you do for the rest of your life. So I think it is with a lot of it. Fatherhood is something that we need to be serious about and take a serious look at, and make sure that our fatherhood does line up with the Word of God. So if we go to the beginning of the Bible, we have the command of God to Adam and Eve there in Eden to be fruitful and to multiply. And even before that, we see God making the earth and everything that reproduces itself. So plants and herbs and animals and even people, right? We have that ability to replicate or to reproduce. And the Bible uses the phrases like after their kind. So an herb or a plant in your garden, it reproduces after its kind, right? So a tree in your yard, if there are seeds from that tree that grow, if it's an oak tree, it's going to make another oak tree, right? If it's a fruit tree, then it'll be that, it'll have the same fruit. And it says, yeah, God said about these things that he created that these things had the seed in themselves, and so that's also the way that we as humans are. That's where it all starts. The seed is in us, and it replicates. We reproduce after our kind. But the problem is that we're not in Eden anymore, and so I think that's the kind of the biggest challenge that we face. So if a tree was in a perfect environment and the seed falls from the tree into the ground, then you could imagine that the plant or the new tree would grow up and it would be perfect, right? But because we realize that we're fallen, we live in a fallen world, and God told Adam and Eve that the ground would bring thistles and I think weeds and thistles or something to that effect. And so now we no longer have that perfect environment, right? So the dirt is no longer can you just drop a seed in that dirt and it just grows naturally into the perfect plant that it would have otherwise. And so I feel that's a little bit of picture that we have of even how raising our children is in this broken world. So Kendra she planted a garden, beautiful garden this year, and she's just really been, I guess, fighting against all the powers that be in the ground, right? So all there's so many things that want to destroy those plants that she has in her garden. She has what they call a fungus gnat that is they're little gnats that they're eating the roots, and they lay their eggs in there, and they become, yes, another destructive force. And so I think that's a little bit the picture of the broken world that we have. So no longer do we just plant our little tomato plant and it just grows and brings forth fruit without any effort on our part, right? And so I think that's the same way with our children. When we bring a child into this world, number one, they have a sinful nature. They're born with that sinful nature, right? And also there's all these forces around us that are going to seek to destroy our children. And so that's one thing I think that we have to be aware of. Romans 8:20. So everything now, because of the fall, because of Adam and Eve's choice to fall away, to walk away from God, everything is subject to corruption. Just a few, I guess I would like to just mention a few traits that I feel need to be, that we need to have as fathers. And just some verses to go along with them, and just some of my thoughts. But Joshua 1:9. Okay, so this would have been right before the Israelites crossed over Jordan into the Promised Land, and this was God's commission, part of God's commission for Joshua, and this verse is probably extremely familiar to all of us. But let's just read that. Haven't I not commanded you, be strong and of good courage? Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Okay, so I guess as fathers, we have the choice to be afraid, right? We have as we think about, our fallen world and the environment that our children face in this world, we could have a lot of fear, but God is calling Joshua here, and he calls us to courage. Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So God always has a plan, and God will give us the strength that we need for raising our families and for being godly fathers and faithful fathers. By the way, I called this message Faithful Fatherhood. So courage is a trait of godly fatherhood. It's something that we need courage to go on. And then Joshua 24:14-15, we see this at the end of Joshua's life, his statement. And this was Joshua talking to the Israelites. We're going to break in. This was after they had received the land, right? This was after the promised land was theirs. He says in 14, now therefore fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the river and in Egypt. Serve the Lord, and if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So courage, I think, for Joshua meant that he was able to set a course for his family. And I think this is a big part of what we are called to as fathers, is to simply to set our children in the way of God, right? And to point them and to take them to Jesus. So Joshua was able to set a course. He says, I don't care what you're going to do, but for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And so that I think is all important, is that we set a godly course for our families and for our children. So if you think a little bit about, what is the purpose of raising your children? What is the purpose of having offspring? Obviously, I think, kind of at face value, our children bring us a lot of joy. I know for myself, growing up or as a young person, it was deeply ingrained in me that I wanted a family, right? And it's easy to think about, I guess before you have a family, at least it's you have really high expectations, and we love children, and it's easy to really have in our minds, I guess, why we want our family, right? Is it brings us a lot of joy and happiness. But really, what's the root cause, for raising children for God? And so if you think about children as they come into the world, 17 months ago, Ashton was completely helpless, and he was at our mercy, and just a perfect, innocent little child. And really, the goal, I think, for as a father or as families, as parents, is that we take this helpless little bundle and we help them to grow, and we take them to a point of being self-sufficient, right? Or at least sufficient on God. And so as a child grows, and they learn life skills, and they eventually the goal is to have them on their own to where they can raise their own families. And so that, I think, is and like I said, in a broken, fallen world that we live in, it's not going to happen automatically. That child, like the plant in the dirt, there are many forces that are battling against, that are coming against this child to thwart anything good, right? So we know that we know that the devil hates good and hates for our children to grow up and fear God. And so there's going to be a lot of forces, and specifically, I guess, the evil forces that come against our children and seek to destroy them. I think another thing that we maybe another trait that fathers need to have, godly, faithful fathers need to have, is flexibility. So I think sometimes our lives maybe end up looking different than what we maybe expected. As we grow and as God brings things into our path, we maybe are doing, we're responsible for things that we never maybe dreamed of. There are dangers that we never expected, and I think Noah is a good example of a man that was flexible and that changed the course of his life to save his family. Hebrews 11:7, I think I'll read that. Hebrews 11:7, by faith Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. So I don't think as a young man Noah expected to build an ark for his family. I don't know what he did for a trade or what he worked or how he made his living, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't building arks. And but one day, God told him there was a flood coming and that the only way to save his family was to build that ark. And Noah was faithful, and Noah changed course. Whatever he was doing before, he wasn't doing that anymore. And he built the ark, and Hebrews there says that it was to the saving of his family. So we need to be lifelong learners in God's school, and as we become aware of dangers or things that could destroy our family, we need to be flexible and be willing to build the ark that saves our family. I think another trait that will be helpful, or that is necessary in being faithful fathers, is commitment. So commitment is the act of binding yourself to a course of action. So if you make a decision that you're going to do something, and commitment is what's going to keep you doing that. So if I decide to raise a family, if a couple years in I decide that I'm really not committed to this anymore and I can walk away from it if I want, but commitment is sticking it out. I think sometimes when things break, we're tempted to just throw in the towel, right? I know this week I had something break, and there were thoughts going through my mind like, well, I need to just sell my business, right? Because I just need to get out of this because it just gives me a lot of trouble. And I think we're all faced with maybe thoughts like that, right? After a while, some of the newness wears off, and it doesn't feel very good anymore. And we're tempted to just quit. And whether that's your Christian life or whether that's your business venture, we're tempted to quit sometime. And I think sometimes we will be tempted to quit with our family. Just like a truck can break, things break at home, right? And we have disagreements, or we have things that go wrong, and it can be a real temptation to just quit and give up. But Noah is an example of that commitment to keep going, and he built that ark for somewhere between 100 and 120 years without seeing the water that was going to float it, right? And so as fathers, we need to be committed and completely be committed to seeing our families through. Ephesians 6:4. Ephesians 6 verse 4 We're just going to read 4 out of this little section here. You fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. Okay, so this is our mandate as fathers, is that we train our children and bring them up in the fear of God. It says, in the training and admonition of the Lord. Psalm 103, verse 13. As a father pities his children, so the Lord pities those who fear him. For he knows our frame, he remembers that we are dust. I think this is another character trait that we need as faithful fathers is empathy and understanding for our children, right? So I think, especially with young children, we tend to understand that they're made of dust, right? Or they're subject to vanity, and they have that broken, sinful nature. And so we understand that, right? And we don't, maybe in a sense, demand perfection from them. When they mess up, it's not the end of the road, right? We can see through that, and we can understand that there's a better day ahead. So empathy is another thing that we need as fathers. So I think maybe in closing we'll go to Matthew. Matthew chapter 20. I think we'll start in verse 20 and read this whole section here down to 28. So I think maybe the reason that we get discouraged as fathers or as leaders is that we have maybe I think a wrong idea of what it means to be a leader or to be a father. And yeah, Jesus in this section, he sets his disciples straight. So they have this idea of what it means to be a leader. And we're not going to do justice to this. I think this would be a good text for a whole message, because there's definitely a lot in here. But we're just going to read verse 20 to 28 of Matthew 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him. And he said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Grant that these 2 sons of mine may sit, one on your right hand and the other on the left, in your kingdom." Okay, so I think maybe where the problem starts here is the things that we desire for our children. We want them to be people of prestige or honor, and so this mother, it seems a little bit selfish that she was wanting, her 2 sons to be at top positions in the kingdom that was coming. She said to him, "Grant that these 2 sons of mine may sit, one on the right hand and the other on the left, in your kingdom." But Jesus answered and said, "You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink, and to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They said to him, "We are able." Okay, so I don't think they understood what was going to happen. They had no idea what was going to happen to Jesus, and I think this is a part of leadership that we, I think, skip over sometime, or we don't understand that this is what it takes to be a leader. So basically, Jesus is saying here is that in order to have this place of sitting on my right hand and on my left, these places of high honor, says you're going to have to go through the same things that I go through, and leadership sometimes is, I think, more about maybe Well, let's just keep reading here to explain. So he said to them, "You will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it is prepared by my Father." And then the 10 heard it. They were greatly displeased with the two brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." So I think Jesus' example of leadership and his example of, being a leader is maybe completely flopped around from the way that we see it sometimes. I think sometimes we feel like leadership or leading out whether it be in an organization or in church or in our families, is about that, the clout that we carry or the authority that is vested in us. But Jesus says here that if you want to be great, it says, "It shall not be so among you." And he says here that this is the way that it is with the rulers of the Gentiles. It says, "They lord it over them. Those who are great exercise authority over them, yet it shall not be so among you. Whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave." I think sometimes maybe the reason that we get discouraged in leadership or maybe as fathers is that after a while it starts to maybe not feel quite so good, right? And but that Jesus is saying here that that's not the point. The point is, if you want to truly become great, that you need to get down and to serve other people. Whoever desires to be great among you, let him be your servant. And then he gives himself as the example. He says, "Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." So I guess that's maybe an encouragement for us fathers when things get tough, is to realize that it's not about us. It's not about holding a position that, we have people below us that can do all the work or whatever. But I think we need to recognize as fathers that fatherhood is work. Leadership is work, and it's just going to be that way. And so when we get discouraged because it is a lot of work, let's recognize that it's the way it's supposed to be. That's how Jesus said that leadership would be. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. I think it's in Mark that Jesus says, in this same setting, it's worded just a little bit different. I'm not going to be able to find it now. Anyhow, he asked the disciples a question. So who's greatest? The one that sits at the table or the one that serves? That serves the food? And I think they would have understood. They would have had servants that would have served the master of the house, and so the disciples answered readily. They said, "Well, it's the man that sits at the table is the one that's great." And Jesus said, "Well, I am actually the one that serves, and you're the ones that are sitting at the table." And so that's Jesus' example of leadership. And I think obviously Jesus is our greatest example of leadership, and I think we can take our cues from Christ. So when the times get tough, let's just remember that God has the answers for us, and God really does care about the things that we face. So I think all of us fathers are definitely at different stages, and some of the things that you face I don't face, and some of the things that I face you're not facing now. And so, but wherever you're at as a father, whether you're in Titus's shoes or whether you're in Derek's shoes, God has the answers, and God will give us the strength and the courage and the stamina to keep going. So I think that's all I have. We'll turn the time back to Luke.